David and Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, Episode 22.
Business Podcast.
Welcome to the show. We are your hosts, David and Wiebe and
Angie Robertson.
It has been a cold week. In fact, probably the last 2 weeks have been pretty freezing. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about, and Angie, I know you have some stuff that you want to get to, but the first thing that I wanted to bring up was, of course, the release of Demos 2010.
Woo!
Which is out. It's up on my website. It's available for download, and we ask that you do, in fact, share it with your friends. We encourage that. And any donations would be graciously accepted as well. I'm not counting on making a living on this or anything, but it's good to see rewards for your hard labor.
Exactly, and Dave's not really saying it much, and he should, and it's what I've been telling all my friends. Download the album and then pay what you think it's worth. Don't be a jerk about it, but pay what you think it's worth.
And I think that's what I even changed it to. Initially it said donate, and I believe it now says pay what you want. So
For sure.
So the collection features 12 tracks that I worked on last year, and believe me, there were more, but definitely not demos in their more complete form like these were. Mm-hmm. I ended up recording about 3 or 4 last minute, so originally it was a collection of 9 tracks. I'm like, is that really enough to kind of put out there? And I guess there's really no set quota or number that I have to release, but I decided to augment it a little bit by recording some newer demos, so yeah, I think I ended up recording 3 or 4 new ones, and that's what went on the release. It varies in variety. There's a lot of different styles in this. There's some hip-hop.
Uh-oh, white man doing hip-hop.
Yeah, or should I say there's some Vanilla Ice on it.
SS baby.
And there is some post-punk, hardcore-inspired sort of stuff, even though it never gets that heavy, I guess. There is some acoustic instrumental stuff, and I also put the podcast themes that I worked on last year on there, just for a little bit of flavor.
Kicks and giggles, I guess.
Yep.
And hey, I can't wait to see, if these are just your demos, I can't wait to see the next album you've got coming out.
Well, I'm hoping that'll
Very
be
exciting.
Releases now also on SoundCloud, so if you happen to be a person checking that out, you can go listen to the tracks there, and you don't even necessarily have to download them. You can just, I think you can even I don't know about this, but I think you might even be able to embed them on a page, so.
Wicked.
I decided to go, instead of all rates reserved, as a common thing.
Common domain?
Something like that. I think you can take the tracks, share them however you want, as long as you do attribute credit to me, which is fine.
Please tribute credit to Dave.
Yeah, would much appreciate that. And I think I even had one comment on SoundCloud, and they were like surprised that there was stuff of this quality on SoundCloud. I was like, okay, maybe I'm hitting on something here.
Wicked.
What would be your first impressions of it, Angie?
The diversity did catch me a little bit off guard, I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I was not expecting the theme to the podcast, but it was on there. I wasn't expecting Razorman, but I do like Razorman. It's got its own kind of funky groove, I like it. There are some tracks on there that you've never even played for me that I was just outright impressed with. Very, very happy with what I was hearing. And those are the demos. Can't wait to hear what happens when you get other musicians in the studio filling out the tracks.
Which ones do you remember?
Remember? Is there something about remembering? I'm so bad with names. I need work on this.
There's Summer I'll Be
You're
Waiting.
Not Forgotten.
Not Forgotten.
Love You're Not Forgotten. Summer I'll Be Waiting I quite liked. I think I had heard that one before.
Yeah.
You're Not Forgotten, I really liked that one. That one really struck a chord for me.
Cool. I figured it would.
And I'd be lying if I wasn't telling everybody to listen to tracks 1 and 2, but
1 and 2, yeah. Well, I guess you may have had a part in those.
I'd be lying if I haven't told my friends to listen to those tracks.
Absolutely. And Pat also played a little bit on the whole demos thing too. He did a bit of keyboard work, which was cool.
You've had a few musicians out to help lately.
Yeah, exactly. So this could become a yearly thing. Because of financial constraints and other things, it can be sometimes difficult to try to do an official release every year. But if people like this kind of stuff, there's definitely more where that came from. And I even recorded my first demo of this year.
Woohoo! What would that be?
Well, you just heard it, but it's called Over My Head.
Over Your Head. Hey, I have to admit, I was kind of impressed that I got to name one of your tracks.
That's right.
Even though I didn't perform on it.
So there was a tune that was originally called Open Strings, and it has been renamed Savage Love because that was kind of the vibe that you were getting from it.
It's getting a vibe about a savage kind of a love that's untamed, a love that's unsafe, but still very pure and very beautiful and very good.
Right. So every time I go up to play it, you're probably going to have to come up and explain the reasoning
behind the title.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Awesome. So that is Demos 2010, and there will be more stuff coming down the line, but I can't tell you how soon because I am now looking for work and probably, if I want to, can start a new job as early as Monday, which is quite possibly what I will do. So, Yup.
Starving artist.
Well, you do a lot of creative endeavors, and it doesn't make them any less valuable or any less worthwhile when your ship isn't exactly coming in when you think it should, but...
It's something we have discussed a couple times on the podcast, and it's something I will always say is support your artists.
Yeah.
Sometimes come out, pay a little more than you normally would. Keep in mind, most artists have to work a couple jobs in order to produce the art they do. Who was it? Churchill had said during the war, they were asking him why he wasn't cutting funding to the arts. And he looked back at whoever suggested it and he said, well, then why the hell are we fighting?
Right.
Why are we living the lives we're doing unless we have that beauty that comes from art? It's what makes life worth living. So please, go support your artists. Otherwise, really stop consuming it.
Yeah, it can be a challenge. And, I basically do work 2 or 3 jobs at this point. And if I included freelancing on top of that, there's just no measure to what amount I'm trying to do here. But
I've never met anybody who works as hard as you do. So.
Well, I don't know about that.
You put in a lot of hours. So.
I'm a hard worker.
And speaking of starting artists, if I can segue, or starving artists, there is an amazing newer theater company in town, and I believe they're doing shows in Edmonton and maybe Rosebud. It's a 3-tour. Look it up, birththickettheater.com. Amazing theater company. I went and saw She Has a Name last week there, just before my show. I went to the preview. I saw the preview, their supposed rough cut of their show. Unbelievable. I've never had a play move me to tears within the first 5 minutes. And there were men and women alike walking out going, wow, that was incredible. It's on human trafficking. It really brings it and makes it real in a way that a movie can't. When you actually can see someone, when you're close enough that you could probably reach out and touch them, it hits you in a very different kind of a way. And human trafficking is a very real problem we have in the world right now. I do believe Canada is one of the biggest importers of women and children, not only for slave labor, but for sexual labor as well. And in some countries, humans are trafficked in order to be child soldiers. It is a problem. We need to deal with it. We need to stop pretending like it doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely. There are definitely all kinds of things to be aware of in the world right now.
And that's one of those things that art does. It's one of those things that music does. Is it makes us aware of things. It makes things real. And this show is very well written. The production quality is amazing. Go out and see it. Buy a ticket. Please, if you see a play this year, go see She Has a Name.
And you said they're going to Rosebud?
I think they're going to Rosebud. I could be wrong. They're going somewhere north and they're going somewhere south. It could be Rosebud or Lethbridge. We could get that up on the blog as well.
Absolutely. Okay. Visit us online at www.daw-music.com/daw-podcast. And don't forget to spread the word. Tell your friends about this podcast. Well, let's move on then to what you wanted to talk about today. Some performances you've been to.
I have a couple shows to plug. I also had my own show that I just did. We just finished the Prometheus, where I was sitting there going, oh, this is terrible. And I think I also mentioned Porgy and Bess, which I was a little worried about. And actually, I could do Porgy and Bess again. It's not traditionally been my favorite opera because it reminds me of musical theater, but it more from the inside doing it, had all the same challenges that I like about jazz. Turned out to be an absolutely fabulous show. Our soloists, oh goodness, I'm not going to remember his name. I think his name is Kevin and I can't remember his last name. And Angela Brown, her name is so easy for me to remember. Absolutely phenomenal musicians that came out. Both could do straight opera and both could do straight gospel and everything in between, the jazz. The two of them, absolutely phenomenal artists, and we got an ovation and an encore, which is very rare for the Philharmonic, so it was very nice, very fun show. And somebody behind me was commenting, gee, see if they're going to ask us to stay on the stage next week when they do Prometheus, they'll be asking us to leave. And I'll admit, the first show, it felt like people weren't sure if they could clap, and the same thing with the second, like, what was this? It sounded much better once we added the orchestra, I have to admit. And I have to give a shout out to Melanie Leonard, who was our conductor for the day. She is the resident conductor of the Calgary Philharmonic Orchestra. She's kind of a stand-in. If anybody gets sick, she goes to bat. I think this is the first time I've ever seen it happen. She's young. She's highly talented. She got the music on Wednesday. She had to do the show Friday. Not only was she doing Prometheus, but some other very huge works. Gonna misquote all of them. She did a phenomenal job. She went out there, she gave it her all, and what a conductor. I know the critics didn't seem too crazy that there was almost a student. I know she's not a student anymore, but some people look at the position as kind of a post-college student position. You can't say that about her. What a talented, gifted musician. Really understood the nuances, really had a passion for the music, even if it wasn't the most popular piece of music, still came out there with some passion, showed us where to go. What a leader. Really impressed.
Right.
Really impressed. And gave me an example to work towards next time I don't like some music. Learning a few things. So that was great. Just wanted to talk about a couple shows coming up. Haiti. There's a show benefiting Haiti. There's still work to go on there since everything that has happened. There was cholera, there was flooding, I believe. There was an earthquake, or was there an earthquake?
Yes.
There was an earthquake, there was flooding, there was cholera, pardon me, I'm saying the name wrong.
I'm pretty sure anyway.
It's a very poor country. There's been a lot of crap happened to Haiti since the earthquake. I'm sure it was an earthquake.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But there's been all this crap that's happened after that sort of pops up in the media, but there's still stuff going on that needs to be dealt with. There's still stuff that needs our support. And as artists, who else is going to go out and do it? It sounds bad, but really I've been involved with a couple Haiti shows now. I don't know what it is, but you throw some artists on a stage and people pay money and we raise money. So it's called Haiti, Voodoo, and You, March 31st at Jimmy's up in the Northeast, starting at 7 p.m. The benefit is Shelters International Disaster Response. It's got a bit of a zombie/beachwear theme. Whoever's got the best costume was a little prize at the end of the night. I will be one of your very gorgeous cookie sellers, so come look for me. I'll be the gorgeous one. I'm kidding. A friend of mine is running it, and I've agreed to go help, and it's going to be a good night. They've got some great bands coming in, more of the rockabilly feel, which has got a bit of an underground following in Calgary, alternative, if you know what I mean, but huge following in the city. Some absolutely fabulous bands that will be out playing. I recommend everybody get out and see it. I'm not going to try to list them because I'm only going to remember one or two, and I think there's 5 or 6 really great groups that are going to be there. Kudos to Minuteman Press. Really have to say kudos to Minuteman Press. They're helping Haiti, Voodoo, and You. They've also are doing my printing for Boob Rock now. Their rates are absolutely phenomenal. He sat down, gave me the rates for everything I was asking. Found out it was a fundraiser, and I thought this was the discount because I was going off a referral. No, this wasn't his discount. This was his rates. Absolutely great rates. I've seen some of the work they've done. Absolutely wonderful print jobs. And and they're giving a discount for my fundraiser, Boob Rock. So, wow, what an amazing, amazing company. I recommend everybody come down and go to Minuteman Press if you've got to do posters. As a musician, when you're promoting a show, you want cheap posters. That's a place to go. Great quality, great people. I absolutely recommend it. And then, again, Boob Rock, May 7th at Lord Nelson's Pub. Come on down. I'm going to be talking about it on the blog until it happens. Or on the vlog podcast. I'm so new. I'm such a noob.
Yeah, if we set you up with a blog account, you probably could talk about it on there too if you wanted to.
I'm a terrible blogger. I really am. I've tried, but it doesn't do anything. Anyways, yeah, kudos to Minuteman Press. And then for, I think, later on in the show, I'd like to talk about a show I saw, unless you want to talk about that now, and then another consumer thing, because I'm right in there.
Well, I think one thing I figured I'd mention, since we are talking about upcoming shows, is I do have some coming up with Adrenalize, so we've gotten back together. We're in the rehearsal space, hammering things out again with a new bass player, and we're looking towards playing on April 2nd, I believe.
Awesome.
So we're doing what we can to get practices in. I don't know how ready we're going to be for April 2nd, but somehow it usually does come together. We were supposed to have a practice, I think, last night, and it just didn't happen. But yeah, we're working towards that. So come on out. I think it's in Okotoks. So I think it's called Foxy's Bar and Grill. But if you go to adrenalize.ca, you can learn about the band and upcoming shows now. So new website, which is cool.
And it's certainly something we can put on the podcast blog as well.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to what you wanted to talk about there.
All right. So I did go to a fantastic show this week. I was taken out to go see a show with a fantastic person that I went and saw the show with. Not going to give details because that's my private life.
Fair enough.
I went and saw Breathe I'll Breathe with Jan Thiessen. It was actually Jan Thiessen was the headliner. Breathe I'll Breathe was out there first. Really great show. I wish I could bring somebody else who was at the show to talk as well, because I think everybody's perspective on Jan Thiessen is a little different. Jan Thiessen is the one who did the soundtrack for Emile as well. I looked it up, and he's done a couple other movies right now that I cannot remember off the top of my head. Really, he seems a little more prolific in terms of he's produced a lot of work, and he's done a lot of recordings, and he's just been out there for years.
Yeah.
A lot of people were expecting more of the Emile accordion French sounding compositions that he's done. A lot of exploration with sound and what kinds of sounds can we produce. There was a couple DJs on stage. There was a drummer. There was himself, another guitar player. There was violin. I think that was a mandolin out there.
Cool.
Bass, clarinet, bass player. It is a 6-person band.
Right.
Pretty much everybody except for the one guitar player played, and the drummer played 2 instruments, or did their thing and sang. Everybody in the band sang. Really great harmonies in places. Really great sounds coming out of there. And Breathe I'll Breathe reminded me a little of along the same line of experimenting with sound. They had a couple karaoke machines on stage for the sound that comes through those microphones. They had a cello on stage. They were really experimenting. Less polished than Jan Thiessen. I really want to see those guys in 5 years to see where they go.
Right.
Really neat sounds. Just needs a little more refinement, I think, for my taste. But what I really liked about Breathe I'll Breathe was his attitude on stage. What a great attitude on stage. A little quirky, a little different, but very funny and very endearing. And that's that stage presence I keep talking about.
Yeah.
It's like I was saying about Michael Bernard Fitzgerald, where sometimes he's like, oh, I'm lame or dorky. Doesn't matter. People are right there with you. And this guy was a little quirky. When he sung a song about a scuba diver, he put on a scuba diver hat. A little different. When they did the wolf song, they put a wolf hat on the cellist there. And that was another thing that was great, is it was a 3-piece band, and everybody in there played, the cellist also did some percussions. So you see her putting down her bow and then picking up a drumstick and hitting this snare over here. And the drummer was only ever drumming with one hand because he was running keyboards and some other sound equipment. I don't understand the electronic music as much, but he was running other things with his left hand and drumming with his right and his feet. So everybody in that band, absolutely diverse, really impressive from both bands. I'd like to see a little more from Breathe I'll Breathe, and I think they've got it, and I think they're really going to impress some people. And I have to say, the cellist, even when she was warming up, just this beautiful serenity fell over her when she played, and really not caring whether or not there was anybody else in the room. And there's a danger to that, because if people aren't with you, it isn't always good, but just absolutely beautiful the way she played.
And I did remember the license that I was thinking of. It's Creative Commons licensing. So
Didn't we say that?
I think that's probably what we said, but I remember the
Creative
actual
Commons.
term.
And that was something that was discussed with Prometheus, and I can give a little background on the piece. I think I did in a previous podcast, but certainly the solo pianist talked about it a little more. While they were composing it, the composer went to him and said, find a story in the Creative Commons that we can contrast technology and the way of the world with. And it's that, we're almost chained to our technology. You get people walking in the middle of the street while texting, or you get people listening to their iPods while they're on a date. I've been on a date where some guy answered his phone and was listening to his iPod the whole time. Didn't get a second date.
Yeah, wonder why.
He thought I was great. I didn't think he was very good, so. But we really are chained to it. Technology is this beautiful, wonderful thing in the current time that we're living in, but it's also got its dangers, and we need to learn how to harness it and use it. Right from you could kill yourself with some of this technology to we're losing some of our social etiquette.
Yeah.
So
it could be an addiction like anything else.
Exactly.
Technology can turn into an addiction, and so we do want to warn against that.
And the story of Prometheus is Prometheus was the god who gave us fire, who gave fire to the humans, but the humans didn't totally understand it. The odd occasion they burned their house down or they burned each other or whatever. While it was very good, it was also powerful and had its dangers. And Zeus, in this piece called Titan, chained him to a rock for eternity, where the crows would come down, not be able to kill him, but eat his liver every day, and then the next morning he'd wake up whole again. And contrasting that with technology nowadays.
Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, we live in an exponential world where things are moving at a very quick rate, faster than ever before.
Have you seen the video on that? Oh, what's it called on YouTube?
Yeah, I don't.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no, I remember watching that. I don't know. I don't remember what
hear
it's
the
called
music
either,
in my head and see the facts.
It's worth checking out.
Somebody write it and tell us what it is.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't tell you what it is. So
somebody write us.
All right. Well, anything else before we move on?
Let's move on.
Okay, so this is part 2 of our interview with our very own Angie Robertson. If you have any questions or comments regarding this podcast, send an email to comments@daw-music.com. That was another subject that I thought about touching on as well, because I'm probably as guilty as the next guy for sometimes turning to TV just because, I want to veg. I'm tired. There's just nothing else for me to do right now. I could play a video game, but even that seems too involving.
It's not even that really bothers me. It's, people having the iPod in the one ear while talking to somebody, or the cell phone constantly ringing, or the cell phone that takes pictures, plays movies, and can nobody sit down and talk to another person? Where are we going to find inspiration for our art anymore if we're not connecting with other human beings, if we're constantly connecting with a piece of media? And media is really good, but I think in some way it can be a detriment.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what this piece that I don't like that we're doing in the Philharmonic is. He feels that technology could become our Prometheus in the North American society. I wish I had dates on that right now. I'd mention it. Come down to the Philharmonic here, the Canadian premiere of Prometheus.
Nice.
Shameless. Yes, I am.
Hey, why not? Yeah, let's plug your show at any opportunity possible.
Yeah.
We'll maybe get that in the show notes if we get the info in time. But.
Yeah. I can pick that up for you off the computer as soon as we're done.
Hey, there you go. So we can put it in the show notes for you.
It does have its advantages.
Definitely, but I think, like you said, the art of conversation is somewhat lost on some people. Even our generation. Let's face it. People that are in their mid to late 20s are kind of struggling with that.
And so much music is about relationships. So much music is about relationship, and we're stunting our own growth here. We're I love this line that is in a piece by Epica that I really like. Chasing our addictions, we're stunting our growth. And I really feel that a lot of us in our generation are addicted to technology and media.
No, I hear you. And I mean, a large part of what I do, obviously, because I do a podcast and other things, is online. But it's not entertainment. Well, I mean, I enjoy it, but it's not entertainment as it is as much work for me. So there is a difference there. But yeah, I think that
how is our generation ever going to have our own song to sing if we don't experience our heartbreak in real time? I mean, we have we have businesses now that will break up with your girlfriend for you.
Oh,
I mean, we're not
that's terrible.
experiencing relationship, and that's what bothers me about media.
Yeah.
You know, you sit and look on people on the bus, and 9 out of 10 of them have iPods.
Yeah.
They're on their iPod, and then they're texting, and I'm certainly guilty of text. I'm a big fan because I feel less invasive.
Yeah.
If I phone somebody, I feel like I'm interrupting them right now, whereas if it's a text, they can ignore me, and I kind of like that.
Right.
But really, no one's connecting. You say hi to somebody on the bus nowadays, and they look at you like you've got 3 heads. I almost like going to small towns in the country because people do interact more.
No, I mean, part of the reason, as I see it, is like a lot of the kids are being medicated.
We are being medicated, yes.
Yeah, to a large degree. I think that's a bit of a problem in North America. We spend thousands of dollars so we can, quote unquote, seem normal, when in fact, the reason you're having panic attacks and other things like that is because it's actually pretty natural and normal under the situations and stress that you put yourself through on a weekly basis.
And I think we're also losing, and this is almost getting away from music, but we're almost even losing our common decency because, there's so much more rudeness and everything else going on in our generation. I think a lot of it is because we don't connect. We don't spend the time to learn from other people and learn who they are and what they're about.
Right.
And that used to be very important. It's very rare to hear people nowadays say, I want to hang out with old people. A lot of young people are just annoyed.
Right.
And I'm not dismissing young people entirely, but it is rare to hear people our age. And I've heard it twice in the last couple of days, and I thought it was just wonderful. I was talking to one person about going to a certain blues jam that I like and just sitting down and talking with the old guys at the bar.
Right.
Because they've got so much to tell. I've got so much to
Definitely.
learn from them. Or someone else who said, I wish I could hang out with seniors more. And I just about fell off my chair because you don't hear that. You don't see that a lot in our generation. There's this huge disconnect. And it's another relationship that we need in our lives.
That's another thing that I see that's happening is there's a lot of kids and a lot of people, young people that are sort of just downtrodden, like they're depressed and down, and they don't feel that they're significant or that they're valuable, when in fact, I mean, their potential is really ahead of them. It's not behind them, and that can definitely take a toll on having good interpersonal relationships, because how you feel about yourself is often how you interact with others.
Oh yeah, and having that relationship is a cure for it.
Yeah.
I had a roommate, I was having the worst day, and she came up and goes, you're the best friend I've ever had. And hearing that you're valuable, if you don't have relationships, you don't hear it. You'll never have any faith in yourself. You'll never have any... Certainly I've struggled with anxiety as a performer, and I still struggle with it.
Yeah.
And sitting down in the chorus, which is a beautiful community, there are certain people who will sit and go, oh, I love your voice, I love sitting next to you. I would never feel any confidence in my voice if I didn't have that feedback.
Right.
And we need community, and especially as artists, especially as musicians, we need that community. And we don't just need an audience, per se, but we also need other musicians to nurture us and mentor us and move us along. There's a wonderful blues jam in Calgary I recommend anybody go to on Saturdays and Sundays at the Boness Hotel. There's a guy in there who's been playing since I think the 30s or 40s. It's been mentioned or rumored. And his big thing is get on stage, let's see what you've got, and let's see if we can nurture you along.
Right.
How invaluable is that skill and talent that guy's got to share with people, Gary Martin? How beautiful
totally.
is that?
And that's sort of been one of my goals of the new year too, because the isolation thing can happen pretty quickly and easily as an artist, that, well, we got to spend a certain amount of time working on a craft. And I think all artists listening to this probably know that. But I've just understood the importance of like working in a community and having a support group around me. Just having different people coming together and working on something together. You know, I have to say, like, and this is maybe coming from a place of pride and it's gradually working out in me. But one of the things is I used to think, well, nobody works as fast as I do. They can't do the things that I want to do and have to do as fast as I can. Why would I bring them in to slow me down? And
sometimes having a project where you stumble on is really good and humbling.
Yeah. But that used to be my thought pattern, and recently when I started just accepting the fact that, okay, I'm a human being, they're a human being. We're not going to always be perfect, but we're going to get more done faster, ultimately. Mm-hmm. It may not seem like that in the short term, but in the long term, we definitely accomplish a great deal more.
You never would have gotten to the place that you've gotten to if somebody didn't have patience with you.
Well, yeah.
I'm lecturing you on your own podcast.
Ain't that the truth, though? Well, you know, people like Adam, who's also been on the podcast, you know, if it hadn't been for people like him, you know, because my first album would have never come out if he hadn't been patient with me and angry with me when he needed to be.
Yeah.
So, but that's what it's good for. It's like we have community, we have friends, and they keep us accountable. They keep us moving forward. We set goals together. We keep each other accountable, and especially if you go out with the outlook of like, let's help each other rather than what's in it for me.
Oh yeah.
Because too many people are tuned into WIIFM. You know, what's in it for me.
Wow, I had to really think about that.
We're tuned into a radio station, though.
Yeah, it's that whole me to we thing that's been a huge movement, and I think it's been an awakening in our generation recently, is realizing the need for community. We're dying. We really are. There are a lot of people in our generation who are dying. If they haven't, I'm not necessarily talking about suicide, I've seen it, but there are so many people who are walking dead, you know?
Yeah, zombies.
Zombies, yes, and it's kind of funny that everybody really associates well with zombies and loves zombies, because that's really a lot of what we are.
Yeah.
A lot of us are just walking around aching inside.
Yeah.
And we're as good as dead.
Yeah.
You know, we might not have jumped off the cliff, and I've certainly been in that place in my life where I've been so isolated. And it stifles you. It stifles what you have to offer the world.
Yeah, exactly. I've felt that way before, too. In fact, there are some days where you just feel like a zombie. It's like, why am I not feeling anything? I want to feel something, but I'm not.
Brains. You don't crave brains?
Fortunately, no. But
Oh. I'm a vegetarian, so I'll have to refrain.
Right. But this is something we talked about a little bit earlier before we even started recording the show, but like it seems like one of the things artists are doing is moving towards country.
Yeah.
And definitely Bon Jovi, I think, talked about the fact that there is a supportive community.
There is, yes.
In that particular genre, whereas what we're seeing, you know, in pop and rock and other is apparently decreased sales. Now, I'm not sure how much I would give credence to what the mainstream reports are saying, because we know that independent sales have actually been going up or have stayed about the same in the last few years. Yeah, it seems like there's still a lot of people who will support a particular artist and build a community around them, show up to concerts, buy their CDs, rabid fans who don't just go after one thing after the next.
It's interesting that you talk about it being country. I mean, I'll admit I'm not a huge country fan. There's the odd person I'll listen to. However, country seems to be a genre about community.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very interesting that in the kind of times we're going through with the recession, the uncertainty, I don't believe we're in recession anymore, but with
supposedly
all the economic uncertainty and war and everything else, certainly things that have been experienced throughout history before, there is that draw toward a community type based genre of music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I'm with you too. Like, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of country, but I've played the occasional gig and the pay was good.
I hate to say it, there's not a lot of country bands looking for a classically trained singer.
That's true, yeah.
I don't know if I could pull it off.
But and we live kind of in a part of the world where we do have a lot of the country and western thing going on with the Stampede and almost year round. Like if you want to tour and make money and all that kind of stuff, then generally you're playing country, at least in this part of the world.
I know some musicians and have worked, there was a band I was involved with a while back. They grew up in a country band. Their dad ran a country band. They were a little bit like the Monkees. Is it the Monkees or the Partridge Family? Maybe a little bit of both. They grew up playing music, playing country, which gave them a lot of skill, a lot of talent as well.
Right.
And were able to branch off into other genres of music. You know, our drummer ended up playing for April 1, I believe, and the guitar player Chantal Kraviazik. And they built a solid foundation of musical skill doing country music.
Yeah,
and
totally.
they were able to get a lot of experience playing on stage because of Stampede and
Yes.
being in Alberta and that big drive for country. And certainly there are a ton of states that you can tour and do a very successful, very lucrative country tour. if you wanted
Exactly.
to.
And I've personally seen. Well, I mean, I'm friends with one of the bands that I played with. I just filled in for the guitarist, and I've seen that they've consistently been able to like tour regularly and make money at it and come out with new releases and CDs.
It's often said that the artist makes their money off the tour and not necessarily
True.
off the album.
Absolutely.
Doesn't hurt to get the on album sale, but
Yeah.
you know, the money is in the gigs.
But what the guitarist said from this band was just simply the fact that I was playing rock and getting paid $150 a night, and I went to play country and I showed up with, you know, all my rock gear, Ibanez guitar and Steve Vai signatures model and all this kind of stuff, and got paid $500 a night. And that difference just, he's like, well, you know what? I can still mix in rock with country, and nobody's gonna look at me weird. So he went that direction, and I think it's worked out pretty well.
And certainly there is more popular country as
There
well.
is.
And it appeals to a larger audience.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there's different types of country. Like nowadays, it's not that distinguishable from pop music. If you listen to the long enough, you'll probably get that slide guitar solo or something in there, and then oh, this is country. But
Yeah.
sometimes you could be listening for a minute and a half, going, it's just a pop song, right?
Yeah. There's certainly so much fusion going on nowadays.
That's true.
That you can really mix anything with anything.
Yeah, there's a lot of mashups and stuff
I've
going
heard
on.
yodeling rock.
Oh wow,
Yeah, it was different.
it's interesting.
Yodel metal.
Something you said earlier kind of triggered this thought in me, but I've been hearing this a lot recently, like Todd Henry, who runs the Accidental Creative podcast, and as well as Seth Godin, because I've been listening to a lot of Seth Godin material recently. But something they just touched on a lot was like generosity, the fact that as artists, we shouldn't be holding back our ideas when we have them. We're actually kind of being a detriment because, like, you know, we want to take the credit for it or whatever, but in fact, there's really no end to the amount of ideas we can come up with, and we're actually doing ourselves a disservice when we don't share them.
Yeah, we're stunting our own growth.
Yeah. And we can definitely get more feedback on our ideas that way too, more people involved.
We grow so much faster when it's all out there.
Yeah.
You can't work on something if it's hidden in the shadows.
Definitely. Well, this has been a great discussion. We're probably going to move on to the next segment here shortly, but is there anything we should have touched on or asked you that I hadn't?
I can't think of.
Okay.
I could bounce 50 directions. It's the attention deficit. So, yeah.
If people want to get in touch with you, do you have an email, website?
I do not have a website.
Okay.
Trying to think of what email would be the best to give on your podcast. I don't really have a music email.
Right.
Perhaps Plankton Productions, PLANKTON Productions @hotmail.com.
Okay. Then you can get in touch with her that way. So
we'll be back shortly with the next segment.
Hi, this is Nathaniel Krieger, and you're listening to the David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcasts.
And we're back with today's closing segment. We certainly hope that you got through the 1 hour, 14 minutes, and 15 seconds of the previous episode of the podcast.
We can be long-winded.
Yeah. It wasn't just the interview that we did with Mark David Stewart. It was also the fact that we rambled on for something like 50 minutes and then was barely edited down to like 49 or 48 or something like that. But
this cut symbol, you need to give it to me.
I guess. Depending on how things go, we might have to just do slightly, well, I'm not going to say truncated, but shorter episodes, more digestible for a while, because I'm going to be busier. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about for the closing segment was actually finances, which is a very important and interesting topic for musicians involved. And so definitely we would be interested in hearing what you have to say about this. Write in if you have a particular method or a particular way of earning your money and balancing that with your creative life, because for a lot of us creative types, that's a very challenging and difficult thing to do.
It is. I've worked the creative job where I'm earning $10 a day for a few years.
Yes.
It was challenging, and I did walk out of it with debt because I did get sick while in the U.S. I'm still trying to get rid of that debt. Not something I recommend doing. I had insurance, but in the U.S., they can arbitrarily decide against it. So, yeah, it's very difficult challenge to sort out as an artist. Some artists are really good at pulling in the cash.
Yep, exactly. And we'd definitely like to know if you have a method that seems to be working for you, whether it's internet or otherwise.
And there are artists who say they sell their souls to do... to write jingles for commercials, or artists who say they sell their souls to write... I know one person who says she pays for her playwriting by writing sitcoms, crappy sitcoms.
Right.
So...
Well, and some of us don't necessarily have an issue with that, selling out, quote unquote, selling out, as the case may be. But
it's controversial.
Yeah, definitely.
I know many artists say that they pay for their art hobbies with their day job. I would definitely be one of those.
Yeah.
It's not to say I don't like my job, but I do my job so that I can do my art.
And that's a very viable thing. And I do remember reading an article online about what the best fits for musicians are in terms of jobs. And one of them, of course, that came up was the trades. But it was actually a lot of other creative work like journalism or writing or graphic design. It's a lot of the stuff that I already do, as it turns out. But yeah, I mean, creative jobs, teaching guitar, for example, which is what I do a lot of the time. Most of these studios, when I first went into it, I think I was probably pretty naive, but I'm like, oh, $7 a lesson. This is excellent. I get to get paid to do what I love. Well, it turns out it's actually a pretty tough racket in the long term. What they don't tell you is that you don't really work during the summer, and even if you do, there's a chance you be teaching 3 or 4 students at most, which is actually a very small amount, because considering if you actually start at 3:30 and go to 9 on most days, like that's probably Monday through Friday, and then you could probably, if you were really crazy, you could do Saturday and get up at 9 and go to about 5 as well.
Good luck gigging.
Yeah, exactly. It would be pretty tough to gig on a Friday night, or even you might be able to get on a Saturday night. And you're talking about 10 to 11 students a day. And all of a sudden that's narrowed down to 3 a week. So you have to...
Yeah, and the only way it's really very viable is if you're teaching out of your home, and you have to have a way of building that base, and you have to have a reputation before that works well.
Yep. And I've also done kind of the whole in-home student thing, which does pay better and is probably more viable. But again, the same thing. The thing that you have to think about there is you're going to have to schedule logistics and driving time and account for break time and meals. And it does, like I said, it does pay better, but you're generally teaching fewer students in a night for the aforementioned reasons.
And they now say you could get a ticket for eating while driving, so
yeah,
that's not an option.
And that is the trouble, because as a teacher, you might be running late, which is, subject to driving and weather conditions a lot of the time. They caught on the phone or caught drinking or caught eating something with the police, and we already talked about that in the previous episode
Yes,
at length, but don't do it.
And how is that going, Dave?
Yeah, so I think the ticket should be paid for.
I'm not talking about the ticket. I'm talking about the texting and talking while driving.
Yeah, I still occasionally find myself talking on the phone. I never text on the phone, but
Not recommended.
something I'll have to work on if I'm in a hurry or if I need to call someone to get to a lesson. But that's still no excuse. I understand that.
We'll buy you a Bluetooth.
Headset of some kind, yeah.
Yes.
Might be handy in this case. I think I've already said this in previous podcasts many times, and there's been warning signs that what I'm doing isn't exactly bringing in or raking in the kind of money that I need to live. And so I'm just being a little more transparent and honest about it on this particular show. But yeah, I'm behind on mortgage payments, and I had a $1,500 cell phone bill come in. In the meantime, I had a $230 traffic ticket come in, which we already talked about. So it's just one of those circumstances where, yeah, I think it's time to get back to the drawing board and figure out a better plan that works, which is why it might be a little more challenging to push out creative projects like this one, but I'm still going to try because I think it's something that's offering people value.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And it's a challenge as an artist, and it's hard sometimes. And especially I'm learning that even studying nutrition and healing arts, there are careers where it's harder to ask someone to stick out your hand and ask someone to pay up for what you're doing.
Right.
And certainly the arts is not the easiest. If you're a painter, your friends are like, oh, if I buy you the paints, can you paint me something? And if you do music, people are like, oh, I'm getting married, can you play my wedding? And it's hard to stick out your hand and ask for some cash sometimes. It's
true. As creative types too, sometimes we have emotional or self-confidence issues. as much as we'd like to admit that. That can come into play when we're trying to ask people to pay for our services. We sort of have to be willing and have that confidence to ask when we need to ask.
Yes.
And that's something that's learned, I think.
An assertiveness to it, yeah.
Us right brains have to learn it. Left brains don't usually have much trouble asking.
Be more assertive.
Yeah, exactly. It should just go on your priority list. It's at the top of your priority list whenever you look at it, and your to-do list. Be assertive.
If we're speaking of money, I got to go into the consumer thing.
Sure.
You got to let me do this. DHL, man, you're never getting my business ever again. Okay, so I have a friend who's writing a book, and the personal assistant is this killer woman. Not going to give too many details, but she kills people. And I'm like, yeah, man, don't mess with us. Here's why. If your business screws up, I'm going to write you on my list, and my business is never calling your business again. Staples is on that list. We now deal with an amazing company called Office Stuff. There are certain car rental companies such as Avis we don't deal with anymore. Things like that. This time it was DHL. There are two companies in my building with one word that's sort of common. One of them uses ventures and the other one is venture. One of them is something ventures and the other one is venture something, if that makes sense. Totally different unit numbers, completely different floors.
Right.
The ventures happens to be by my work, and if their package, if they're not there, their package can be delivered to my work. After, I think, 3 or 4 days of every single day telling this guy, no, this does not go across the hall from where I am. No, I will not take your package for you. You need to take it downstairs to the company that it's addressed to and not give it to me. Waits until I'm not in the office one day, dumps it on my boss, asks my boss, who doesn't have time to check the package, to sign for it. I go down to the one downstairs and find out that repeatedly their packages go missing. They have no idea where to look for it because they're looking at the other venture, don't know they should be talking to us. And sometimes these packages sit in our office for a couple days until the other company comes in and realizes it isn't theirs because they're only in 2 days a week.
Right.
It's kind of one of those things where, come on, DHL. Okay, cool. I'm going to go complain about the guy. DHL has deliberately set things up so that I don't have a phone number to complain. And I can't actually email the department I want to complain to about my complaint.
Terrible.
I spent an hour dicking around their website and phoning them and trying to get transferred through to somebody I could complain to get nothing.
Brutal.
And all I want to go is, there's 2 companies with similar names. Please, guys, be a little more careful. So I wrote a very large texted letter and put it up underneath the sign that said to bring it to my company until the DHL guy figured it out and stopped doing it.
Right.
I was using probably a 30 or 40 font.
Wow.
Dude, read.
It seems to be kind of an ongoing story or ongoing problem. What is this? Just like a bad year for Calgary or something?
What is with customer service?
Yeah.
You know, keep in mind, if you screw up, somebody's going to tell everybody they know how bad you did.
Well, yeah.
If you did good, though, sometimes I'm going to tell everybody I know. Every other receptionist I know has switched to office stuff because I've told them how much better it is every time they complain about Staples.
Yeah.
There's a reason for it. Office
Right.
stuff knows what they're doing. They know their stuff. They treat you very well, and they bring me cookies.
Nice. Cookies is a nice bonus.
But their staff also works very hard for the business, and they get rewarded.
Right. Well, I have an update with Toyota too, and they said they would send me that check for 400, roughly 400 they told me, and then another check for roughly 200 they told me. So I've received the check for $430, but I still have yet to see the check for $200. And this is at least 3 months after going through this whole rigmarole of calling them up and telling them that, you know, I have this rental and costs racked up, and yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if it's even worth going through this whole process.
WTF, Charles Glenn, WTF.
And when I got the check with $430, you know, we look forward to, you know, having your business in the future. But they're not willing to do anything to actually keep their clients.
You know, BMW did about the same with my roommate. Although it was a case of playing to gender, which is funny. We were discussing earlier today.
Yeah.
They didn't realize that his wife, who is my one roommate, would be the one picking up the car and dealing with a lot of things. Meanwhile, they're trying to appease him, yet treating her like absolute garbage every time
wow.
she deals with them. With him, oh, your car is late. Oh, it's not quite what you'd asked for. We'll fix it. We'll fix it. They turn around and fix it. And then, you know, oh, here's a jacket. Here's this, this, and this. And yet forgetting that the wife is dealing with them too whenever he's out of town, which is frequent, treating her like garbage. She's telling everybody.
Right.
She's telling everybody just how bad BMW is to deal with. And I don't have exact details or I'd be giving them to you. I like to be more accurate.
Yeah, it's good to be research on
But
this.
seriously, keep in mind, when you treat the woman as stupid... there was a guy at PM Hobby who was, PM Hobby, fantastic group of people on the whole. They're donating things to my event. And I think it was just one staff member or something like that was dealing with somebody, and it was the girl into RC cars, not the guy.
Right.
She's the one asking questions. He kept talking to the guy. The guy corrected the salesperson. In his defense, the salesperson corrected what he said and said, "I'm so sorry. I thought you were doing this for him." No, we're doing it for her. Don't always assume. I used to have that problem doing
Right.
lighting and sound all the time. You know, I may be female. I know my stuff. And sometimes, especially in hobby crafts, or, you know, you go into a D&D store and everybody's going to assume it's the guy playing. I know nothing about D&D for the record, but I know girls who play.
Right.
You know? It's not always going to be the guy.
And earlier I mentioned my $1,500 cell phone bill. Well, see, the reason that happened was because I switched from basically a normal phone over to a smartphone. Now I had a Palm Trio, and which was considered quote-unquote a smartphone at the time, but it didn't do a lot of the things that phones now do, like downloading apps and playing music and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I had them change over to a new data plan for me, and because when I first got my phone, I got it because I switched bank accounts. I went from TD to Royal Bank, and it was part of the offer that they would give you a Palm Trio. So
Nice.
and they also would put you on the business plan, which at first I thought there was some kind of incentive for remaining in that. So when I got a new smartphone, I decided, okay, let's stick with the business plan and give me a data plan. And they said, well, okay, it looks like they have one. It's 4 megs. Are you sure okay with that? And at first I was like, well, I don't know really what considerations are going to be relevant here. So I thought, okay, that's probably a reasonable amount. And by now you've probably figured out why I was charged so much.
I've never had a smartphone. I'm still a little naive to this.
Now, I did get that corrected in that they did remove one charge of about $50 to $70, which in this case isn't a whole lot. And I did get a new plan, so don't worry about that. I am on a good plan now, but I wasn't before, and I didn't know it. And I tried to explain this and reason with them. They wouldn't have it. And so I've been trying to pay it down in small amounts that I'm able, but they don't really seem to be willing to offer a whole lot of grace and are telling me that they would suspend my account within 6 weeks unless they see more than I've already told them I'd be giving them. So
I think this is part of the reason why phone companies with the model like Virgin and Koodo, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think perhaps Fido, where you can cancel and switch. I think there are so many disgruntled customers from Rogers and Telus.
Yes.
I've heard nothing but complaints out of companies like Rogers and Telus.
Same.
Companies like Koodo that I deal with, they have to work to keep me. And they do work to keep me. And yeah, people are like, oh, it's just Telus. But if I walk into a Koodo store and say I'm unhappy about this, they're going to work to keep me in the door.
Yeah.
And Virgin Mobile, I think a lot of people are switching to that other model, which is more popular in other countries. And it's very interesting that it's a model in North America, because in other countries they buy their phone and then they deal with the company.
Right.
We only have this model in North America because we want it now. Because phones really are worth a couple $100.
Yeah.
If you think about the technology at your fingertips, and sometimes more. So I think it's becoming more popular because people are frustrated and disgruntled with the kind of service they've been getting.
Yeah.
And with situations like yours, I think I can't say for sure, but I think we are going to start seeing more companies moving towards that model of, oh, you can cancel anytime. Or you buy your phone and then you pay for your plan.
Right.
Because really a lot of the cost of your plan is the cost of the phone built in.
Well, and people are, they have unlimited data plans these days. So it doesn't make sense that just because you made the wrong choice in the plan that all of a sudden you get penalized for, okay, I was a little naive. I'll give you that much. I should have been a little more studied in this, but it's a little crazy.
It makes you wonder if that's how these people are making their money.
Yeah.
Is see how naive you'll be first.
Well, and the funny thing, too, is I heard a story about a guy who went overseas and used his cell phone for his internet. So he was using his laptop, but he was routing it or tethering it to his cell phone to get internet connection. And he was gone for probably 2 or 3 weeks. When he came back...
and he had checked his roaming before he left.
Yes. But when he came back, he saw a charge for $30,000. So I'm not sure how...
I do recall hearing about this, and there was some kind of billing loophole that the phone company had used to bill him that, and he'd called and actually asked before he left about roaming.
That very thing. But international, when you tether your phone to internet connection, I guess all of a sudden it's a different ball game, and so
I think that's what happened.
That was the excuse they used. So he gets a $30,000 charge. Well, there's people carrying credit card balances that with their credit cards maxed that are less than that.
That's what some people earn in a year.
Exactly.
I don't earn much more than that, and I'm a white collar worker, quote unquote.
So these cell phone companies expect you to pay that within 2 months, or you're
going to collections. They're shutting off your phone.
Yeah, you're going to suspend your
credit
service.
History. Pardon me. Yeah, they can ruin your credit history. Yeah.
So you're telling me that there's absolutely no grace, even with the current financial and economic downturn. I mean, okay, certainly they seem to be saying it's recovering, and I don't blame all my problems on a quote unquote financial recession, but still, you have to realize that there has been economic ramifications, and that people might need a little bit of grace period to try to figure things out.
Try to pay a $30,000 phone bill.
Yeah. Now, I heard in his case, he called in and most of his charges were removed. So he ended up paying probably more like $1,500 as opposed to $30,000, which is
still pretty big.
Still a large chunk of money if you're an artist. Well, those are just some of the things that caught our attention. We certainly don't want to sound like complainers and whiners. It seems like we're always talking about.
But it is important to when you are earning less, it's important to be savvy with your money. It's important to properly manage what you do have.
Yeah.
Maybe learning, I don't want to go to Starbucks because it's $5 for a medium coffee. I'm going to go hit Tim Hortons or McDonald's where it's $2 or less.
Right. And we just want to go on the record to say, like, any company or products that we've mentioned here, we're neither endorsing nor condoning, which I know means the same thing, but you know what I mean.
Endorsing, or the other word is going against, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though we're kind of...
Whatever the word is.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah.
Yep. Any final thoughts before we close this out?
Be a savvy consumer. Go sit and look it out yourself.
All right. Okay, well, thanks again for joining us today. We'll be back.
Thank you.
This podcast is a part of the Blueberry Network. You can find this and other great podcasts at blueberry.com. That's blueberry with no e's.com.
You've been listening to the David Andrew Wiebe Interviews and Music Business Podcast, broadcasting from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. This has been a Red Flame production. To learn more about Red Flame, go to redflamerecords.com.